Hey there everybody, Sage Popham here, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and in this week's episode I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about comfrey. You know, this is a super important plant in traditional Western herbalism as well as in modern herbalism, but there's kind of this stigma around it too, right? Like everyone seems to be kind of a little bit scared of comfrey, right? Because there's some research on it and on some of the constituents in there as being potentially dangerous. But this is an herb that has been used in Western herbalism, both topically and, yes, believe it or not, internally as well for a really long time. But not a lot of folks really talk about the possible internal usage of comfrey. So in this week's episode, I'm just going to be sharing a little bit more about this plant, some of its uses and characteristics, and so you can know more about it and be able to use it with greater confidence and competence. So enjoy this week's post on comfrey. Sherry is asking, comfrey, what is its effect on the body? How can it be applied? Yeah, good question. I like how direct your question is. So comfrey, or Symphytum officinale, this is, this is a remedy that has been around for a very long time. It's a very popular herbal medicine. It is, there's like controversy, not controversy, but maybe a little bit around comfrey, differences of opinion to be sure. So, one of the main things about comfrey is most herbalists say, comfrey is pretty much strictly for external use only. Even though you'll look in old herbals and it'll give all sorts of internal usage for it. Generally speaking, in modern herbalism, comfrey is strictly applied topically. The reason for this is that it contains particular compounds called pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Pyrrolizidine alkaloids have been shown to harm the liver, and therefore comfrey is therefore recommended for not internal consumption. This is also now being applied to bone set. And I think there's one other one. Pedicides, or like our Western colt's foot, has PAs in it too. So this is kind of one of those things where science is maybe butting heads with tradition a little bit, in that, well, here's this plant that's been used for a long time and been used internally. It wasn't killing anyone. Science discovered it has this compound. They probably administered that compound in isolation to some rats. It gave them liver cancer. And then they say comfrey isn't safe in humans for internal consumption. It's like, whoa, there's a huge leap of logic there that sometimes is a little tricky to, for me to accept. But nonetheless, topically speaking, we see comfrey essentially, to me, what comfrey does is it builds and generates tissue. I think that is the essence of what this plant does. I consider it one of the most powerful embodiments of the earth element, as well as the archetype of Saturn, because it builds structure. This is what comfrey does. It also has a lot of water element in there too. But it's like earth and water, very powerful, builds structure, builds tissue. So this is why topically it's one of our top vulnerary plants or wound healing agents. One of the things though is that you can only really use it on superficial wounds. You don't use comfrey, especially in puncture wounds. Because it generates tissue so well, it'll generate the top layer of tissue first, leaving the damaged tissue underneath. And then it's not able to effectively drain or breathe, and you can create abscesses or infections that way. So you always use comfrey just on superficial scrapes, lacerations, things like that. But it works very, very well. Comfrey is also, so it's vulnerary, it's also very demulcent. So very good for dry conditions, skin conditions. It's unique because it's astringent in wound healing, but also demulcent. So it's a very unique property that you don't see in a whole lot of plants. I would say maybe plantain has that a little bit, but comfrey has it a lot stronger. Now, internally speaking, what we see Comfrey doing is really having a strong effect on the gastric mucosa. So I think this is a really great plant here because it's wound healing, right? So think of that in the gut, think of that in the stomach. Excellent remedy, as actually we were just talking about GERD a little bit, traditionally used. The demulcent cools down, can help cool down reflux. Wound healing property, excellent ulcer remedy, both in the gastric ulcer or ulcers in the stomach or in the intestines. Great leaky gut plant, astringing and tonifying the gut mucosa. Any dryness in the gut, the demulcent property and the wound healing property combined makes it a really powerful agent for healing gastric tissue. Okay, so that's one of the main ways I like it. Also really great for healing bones and connective tissues, right? So anytime topically, you can use it on broken bones. Sprains, strains in the tendons, ligaments, cartilage, all that stuff. Really great for the connective tissue. Again, building structure. I consider it a connective tissue tonic, combines well with things like mineral-rich plants, nettles, horsetail, other connective tissue remedies, especially like Solomon seal, really great there. Yeah, so organ prolapse, it could be applicable there, both using topically and internally. So relaxed tissue, basically relaxed tissue states, dry tissue states, hot inflamed tissue states. It's really, really great here. Ever so slightly cooling, but not so much it's going to make you cold, right? It's going to soothe heat and irritation, and yeah, it's just a really great remedy. Generally speaking, if you're going to administer Comfrey internally, I think it is best used in infusion form. It is also, from a pyrrolizidine alkaloid standpoint, from what I've been taught, the leaves tend to be lower in those alkaloids than the roots. Both parts of the plant are used. From my experience, the roots are more demulcent than the leaves. The leaves are a little more astringent than the roots. But if you're drinking, if you want to drink it or take it internally, I would just recommend using the leaves because a tincture is going to definitely quite likely draw out more of those alkaloids because alkaloids tend to like mid-range alcohol water solutions. So yeah, little bit on Comfrey there for you, Sherry. Hopefully that helps you wrap your mind around that plant a little bit more.